Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're peeling back the layers on a pair of truly astonishing accounts. We're talking narratives where you see the immense power of a badge, those strict protocols of military life, and just unwavering personal conviction really collide out on the open road.
Yeah, spectacularly collided, you might say. These aren't just minor incidents.
Exactly. So imagine this. You're driving home late at night. Maybe your mind's winding down after a long day, quiet music playing perhaps. Then suddenly, those unmistakable flashing lights pierce the darkness right there in your rearview mirror.
It's a common scenario, right? Something most of us have experienced or at least worried about, that sudden jolt.
Totally familiar. But what happens when the person being stopped isn't just any civilian, but a high-ranking military officer? Someone forged in discipline, accustomed to duty, deeply ingrained with a sense of order.
And on the other side, what if the officer initiating that stop believes their uniform, their badge, makes them absolutely untouchable? Above question, the ultimate authority on the street.
That's the core of it, that dynamic. And that's what we're digging into today.
What's truly illuminating here, I think, is how two very distinct incidents happening in different states actually reveal remarkably similar patterns of behavior, especially from those in positions of power. They really shine a spotlight on this universal, often very challenging struggle for accountability when authority gets misused.
Yeah, and we've meticulously sifted through a rich stack of detailed accounts for this. We've dissected pretty much every moment, from that very first flash of cruiser lights all the way to the final impactful verdicts that reshaped lives and definitely challenged the systems involved.
The detail is incredible in these sources.
So our mission today is really to extract the most crucial nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from these sources. We want to give you a shortcut to understanding not just the dramatic what happened, but also that deeper why it matters. And crucially, what these compelling stories teach us about authority, about integrity, and about the power of simply standing your ground.
So as we delve into these narratives, the question for you listening is, what does this all mean for you? How do these lessons apply, whether you're just navigating the road day to day, or maybe observing the intricate dynamics of power playing out in your own life, in your community?
Let's find out together. Let's dive in. Okay, so setting the scene. Our journey begins with two incredibly detailed narratives. Both unfold on otherwise quiet nights just after 11 p.m. And both began at what should have been routine traffic stops.
Should have been, yeah. But they very quickly escalated into something far more significant. They became these powerful confrontations that ultimately ended up in courtrooms.
Our first story takes us to Toledo, Ohio. The streets are pretty quiet at that hour. And here we meet Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace. She's an accomplished Army officer, someone who just embodies calm professionalism. She's driving her government-issued black SUV after a late-night meeting, just focused on getting home.
Right, she wasn't speeding, wasn't swerving. As far as she knew, she hadn't done anything wrong at all. Her vehicle was unremarkable, clean, quiet, kind of a reflection of her own demeanor, really.
And then, in this really striking parallel, our second story transports us down near Birmingham, Alabama, a stretch of highway there. Here we encounter Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson of the Navy. She too was driving late at night, apparently drumming her fingers lightly on the wheel, humming some jazz tune.
And she wasn't in uniform either. Just simple clothes, hair pulled back, been on the road a couple of hours, getting tired. She definitely didn't think she stood out.
Until those lights appear behind her.
Exactly, until the lights. And when we connect these two situations, what emerges is this really fascinating contrast, isn't it? Both Adrienne and Renee operate within the strictest military protocols. I mean, their world is governed by clear chains of command, unwavering discipline, precise rules of engagement.
Absolutely. They're disciplined, composed, professional. It's ingrained, uniform or not.
And this deep-seated expectation of order, of procedure, the very framework of their lives, is about to just violently clash with the unpredictable and, frankly, seemingly unchecked nature of the authority they encounter on the street.
Yeah, the officers they met seemed to be playing by a completely different rule book. Highly subjective, often arbitrary.
That's a good way to put it, arbitrary.
Okay, so let's get into the initial confrontation. This is where the stories really start to gain momentum. Because right from the very first moments, the officers involved set a tone that just spiraled downwards, fast. They turned routine stops into these immediate tests of power.
Yeah, what we see are instances where just basic standards of professional conduct seem to, evaporate, vanish.
Let's start with Lieutenant Colonel Wallace in Toledo. Encountering Sergeant Daniel Mercer. So Adrienne Wallace driving calmly, completely within the law, just focused on getting home. But Sergeant Daniel Mercer, he'd been parked near Reynolds Road, apparently sipping lukewarm coffee, scrolling his phone. Basically, bored.
Right. Slow shift, almost midnight, no calls, no action. And he was looking for something.
In the moment Adrian's unfamiliar government-issued SUV passed by, Mercer, seemingly just to engage, tossed his coffee cup and flicked on his lights. His cruiser was right behind her almost instantly. Didn't give her much time to react.
But true to her training, she slowed immediately, pulled over calmly, controlled movements, everything by the book.
But from the second Mercer slammed his patrol car doors shut, that sharp thwack sound, his aggressive demeanor was clear. He didn't approach the passenger side, which is often standard practice. He walked directly to her driver's window.
And his hand was deliberately resting on his holstered weapon, flashlight in the other hand, already signaling intimidation.
His first words, a stark demand. License and registration. No greeting, no explanation, just blunt. Adrienne, keeping her hands visible on the wheel, rolled the window down maybe halfway. Her voice was steady, calm. She asked, "Officer, can I ask why I was stopped?"
A perfectly reasonable question.
Absolutely. Mercer's immediate response, shine the flashlight directly in her face. Accusatory tone. You were drifting between lanes, didn't signal, looked like you might have been drinking.
Wow! Just straight to accusation.
Yeah. Adrian, raising an eyebrow slightly, just firmly stated, I wasn't.
Oh.
He repeats his demands for documents, louder this time, trying to assert dominance. Adrian, without arguing, slowly gets her documents. As she hands them over, she adds, still composed, this is a government vehicle, I'm a federal employee.
Giving context, providing information, still cooperative.
Right. Mercer glances at her military ID, gives this little dismissive smirk. Says, military, yes, doesn't mean you're above the law, as if she'd claim she was.
Which she absolutely hadn't.
No, she calmly replied, I never said I was. Then his voice hardens. Step out of the vehicle.
Okay, here we go. Escalation.
She blinks, surprised. Excuse me, he repeats more forcefully. I said, step out of the car, I'm doing a sobriety test.
On what grounds? She just asked why she was stopped.
Exactly. Her jaw tightened slightly, but she kept her composure.
Asked him,
On what grounds? I've cooperated, I haven't been drinking, I'd like to know the reason.
still asking reasonable questions.
Mercer moves closer. His tone is now overtly threatening. Now you're refusing a lawful order.
Framing her perfectly reasonable question as refusal, it's a tactic.
It is. Adrian didn't flinch. No, she replied, voice unwavering. I'm asking for an explanation. He clearly hated that. His face tightened with frustration at her calm defiance. Then suddenly, jarringly, he yanks her car door open himself, barks at her, Get out of the car now!
Whoa, opening her door? That's a major escalation, a physical boundary crossed.
That was the pivotal moment for Adrian. This wasn't just aggressive, it felt like a physical breach. That's when she quietly, calmly, turned on her phone camera. Hit record. Small movement, almost imperceptible. Her voice remained steady. Just so we're clear, this conversation is being documented.
Smart move. Calculated. Self-protection.
Mercer's eyes flick to the phone, and for the first time you see this flicker of hesitation, maybe uncertainty, cross his face.
Ah, the awareness of being recorded.
But it was fleeting. His pride, his established persona, it kicked back in. He didn't back down, just repeated, out now.
Doubling down.
Adrian, without another word, stepped out. Stood tall, firm posture. Not aggressive, didn't yell, didn't resist physically, but her confidence was palpable, even in civilian clothes.
You can just picture it, that military bearing, even out of uniform.
Right. Mercer studied her for a moment, maybe a tiny voice nagging him. What am I dealing with here? But his arrogance drowned it out. He proceeded to make her do a field sobriety test, under the harsh glare of the cruiser headlights. Walk the line, the whole thing.
Completely unnecessary based on what we know.
Totally. And she passed perfectly. No slurred words, no stumbling, no hesitation.
Of course she did.
Despite this, he still wrote her a ticket for failure to stay in your lane. A baseless accusation.
Unbelievable. Just to assert his authority at the end.
Adrian took the paper without a word, just gave him this quiet, knowing look that probably said everything, then got back in her car and drove away.
And Sergeant Mercer, in his arrogance, had absolutely no idea that simple, unwarranted ticket would land him in court and change his whole career.
Not a clue. Okay, now let's shift south near Birmingham. Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson's encounter with Sergeant Daniel Briggs. She's humming to jazz, focused on getting home, sees the lights. Her stomach clenches. Not from fear, she notes, but from exhaustion. She kind of knew how these things went, that predictable dance of power.
Yeah, that sense of weary resignation is telling, isn't it? She signals, pulls over smoothly, hands on the wheel, by the book.
A white patrol car stops behind her. Sergeant Briggs took his time getting out. Moved like a man who expected obedience, the source says.
Performative, setting the stage. Heavy boots scuffing the asphalt, hand on belt, flashlight clicks on as he approaches.
His first words, like Mercer's, a demand. License and registration. Flat, practiced, impatient voice. No greeting, no explanation.
Same pattern, immediate assertion of control.
Renee, composed, calmly asks, "Was I speeding, officer?" Briggs doesn't answer right away. Takes her papers, holds them just out of reach, gives her car a quick, dismissive look, then accuses her, taillights out.
An easily verifiable claim, but presented as fact.
Renee frowns slightly, murmurs, "That can't be right," genuinely perplexed.
And that slight questioning is immediately challenged.
Immediately, Briggs meets her gaze, asks, "Are you arguing with me?" That silent, power-laden moment hangs between them.
She can feel the shift, right? Authority meeting even a hint of resistance, expecting capitulation.
She'd seen it before, knew not to push directly, but also knew her rights. "I'm just saying," she replies, calm, even voice. "My taillights were checked a few weeks ago, but if there's an issue, I can get it fixed."
Offering a solution. Still cooperative.
Briggs cuts her off sharply, like he didn't hear her. Voice hardens. "Step out of the car, because I said so."
The classic "because I said so." No justification needed in his mind.
Renee exhales slowly, glances around, no witnesses nearby, taps her fingers on the wheel, thinking, then reaches for the handle. "Mind telling me why?" she asks, still pushing gently for a reason.
He gives that little smirk again, doesn't he? "Because I said so."
Yep, just bare assertion of power. She pauses, then unbuckles and slowly opens the door, steps out onto the pavement. Her posture is described as relaxed, but measured. Not looking for a fight, but definitely not going to be bullied.
Projecting calm, but firm boundaries.
Briggs steps back, scans her, sizes her up, demands, "Turn around," hands on the car.
Now ordering physical positioning without cause.
This time, Renee hesitates more noticeably. "For what reason?" Voice firm.
And that's when his smirk disappears completely.
"Gone." He steps closer, tone laced with accusation. "Are you resisting?"
Again, framing the question as resistance.
Renee firmly states, "No, I'm asking a question." He seems almost amused by her persistence, then suddenly reaches for his radio. "We got a non-compliant driver here," he mutters into it, loud enough for her to hear, then louder to her. "Turn around."
Publicly labeling her as non-compliant. Escalating again.
Renee's pulse picks up, understandably, but she keeps a neutral, controlled expression. "Officer," she says, voice low but unwavering, "I need you to understand something. I know exactly what I'm allowed to do, and I know exactly what you can't do."
Wow. A direct assertion of her knowledge, her boundaries. Not a threat, but a statement of fact.
And that clear, quiet statement, it leads to immediate arrest. "You're under arrest," he snaps, reaching for her wrist. Voice sharp, definitive. "For obstructing an officer."
Obstructing by asking questions, it's absurd.
He pulls out handcuffs. Renee moves slightly, avoids his initial grab. "Under arrest for what?" she repeats, still seeking that basic clarification.
But her military training kicks in, right? Heartbeat steady, breathing even. She sees the two stark choices.
Exactly. Comply now and fight this later, or push back and risk violent escalation, becoming another statistic.
A calculated decision under extreme pressure.
With slow, deliberate movements, she turns, places her hands on the roof of her car. Compliance, undeniable. Dignity intact.
But Briggs wastes no time.
No. Yanked her arms behind her back, tightened the cuffs way too much, metal biting into her wrists, shoves her roughly toward the patrol car.
Painful and unnecessary force.
Renee murmurs, almost a whisper, "You don't know what you're doing." Briggs chuckles, harsh, humorless sound, as he shoves her into the back seat. "Lady, I know exactly what I'm doing."
The arrogance is just staggering. He truly didn't know the hornet's nest he'd just kicked.
Not even close. His arrogance was about to meet a very different kind of reality.
It's striking, isn't it? In both cases, the officers immediately defaulted to intimidation, assuming noncompliance instead of just basic professional conduct.
Yeah, they escalated dramatically without any real grounds, just testing their authority from moment one.
It really speaks to a fundamental misuse of power, where the badge becomes a tool for control, not protection or service.
So, given these initial displays of aggression, what kind of individuals were these officers? What did their backgrounds suggest about this behavior?
Correct. To really grasp how these encounters spiraled, we need to unpack the officers themselves. Their actions seem deeply rooted in their perceived authority and maybe the environments that shaped them.
Exactly. Let's look behind the badge.
Starting with Sergeant Daniel Mercer in Toledo, the hardened controller. She wasn't a rookie. 15 years on the force. And that experience, the source says, had hardened him, created this persona of unwavering, often kind of brutal certainty.
Seen it all, handled everything, street fights, car crashes, the whole messy side of policing.
And through that, he carved out this reputation, the kind that made rookies sniffing when he walked in. Acknowledgement of his dominance.
And the sources say he liked it that way.
Yeah. His method was simple. He didn't ask questions, he gave orders. For Mercer, the badge meant control, final say.
Didn't matter who it was, teen, veteran, driver asking questions, he never backed down and he never apologized. His precinct knew him as reliable, showed up on time, never hesitated, but also had that sharp tongue and a quick temper. Volatile mix.
And crucially, nobody challenged him, the sources emphasize, until that night.
Back at the station after stopping Adrienne, his dismissiveness was almost casual, wasn't it?
Completely. Barely mentioned the stop, logged it simply. Failure to maintain lane, possible impairment, no arrest. Tossed his body cam in the charger, footage untouched for 2 days. Zero concern.
He even joked about it in the break room with a younger colleague, Officer Diaz, recounted how some woman tried to pull rank on me, flashed her government ID like it was supposed to scare me. Found it amusing.
But that's where the cognitive dissonance kicks in, right? When Diaz reacts.
Diaz stops him, voice suddenly intense. Wait, she was military. Mercer shrugs it off, identifies her. Wallace, Adrienne Wallace. And Diaz's face just changes dramatically. Eyes widen. She corrects him. Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, Sergeant. She spoke at the academy last year.
Oh, wow. Immediate recognition of her status.
Diaz gets more serious. She's not just military. She's high up. Runs logistics at Fort Wayne, Bronze Star, 2 deployments. She's real.
A significant revelation. Not just some random person. A figure of authority and respect.
But despite this, Mercer stubbornly waves it off. Don't care who she is, he retorts, still dismissive. On the road, I'm the law.
Still clinging to that belief.
Yet, the text subtly notes a shift. Something in Diaz's tone stuck with him, that tiny hint of respect. Still, true to form, Mercer didn't check the footage, didn't think twice about the ticket.
In his mind, it was over. That refusal to reconsider, even with new information, just underscores his deep-seated belief in his own absolute authority. He saw himself as the law, not just an enforcer.
Yeah. Now, Sergeant Daniel Briggs in Birmingham, the power-drunk intimidator. A different flavor, but equally dangerous.
He carried himself like a man who expected obedience, radiating this air of someone drunk on power, convinced he was untouchable.
After arresting Renee, shoving her in the car, he actually whistled, muttering, well, let's take a little ride.
Just unbelievable arrogance.
He even told Renee, while she was cuffed in the back, most people just keep their mouths shut when I tell them to step out. Trying to belittle her, justify his actions.
Blaming the victim. Classic.
When he figured she might be military, his tone shifted, got kind of predatory. You military? He asked. Yeah, I figured, condescendingly, you got that attitude, that above-the-law type.
Projecting his own issues onto her.
He smirked. Bet you thought I'd back off if you threw that around, huh? Clicked his tongue, judged her, adding, shame. If you just kept your mouth shut, we could have avoided all this, audaciously blaming her for his actions.
And he even sneered at her during booking. Right. You think you're smart, huh? Told her to enjoy your stay in the cell. Just cruel.
Absolutely cruel.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that kind of systemic indifference from others, those behind the desk who barely looked up, just going through the motions, that's the environment that let bad men like Briggs thrive.
Yeah, his arrogance wasn't just personal. It was enabled by a system that seemed to tolerate or ignore it.
He genuinely believed he knew exactly what he was doing, that he was above reproach. And that belief was sustained by a system allowing him to operate unchecked. His badge wasn't responsibility, it was a weapon. Untouchable.
So these distinct but similarly flawed approaches to authority, these deeply ingrained beliefs about their own power, they really set the stage for how these women would respond.
Their next moves became the crucial turning point, not just for them, but definitely for the officers who had underestimated them so badly.
Right, because these were not women looking for drama or confrontation. Far from it. But their military training, their deep sense of justice, meant they were absolutely unwilling to just let these incidents fade away.
They understood the broader implications. This was bigger than just a personal slight.
Let's look at Adrienne Wallace's strategic countermove first. Lieutenant Colonel Wallace was not the type to make noise over nothing. 22 years in uniform, 2 tours overseas, countless close calls where calm judgment was everything. She didn't have time for petty fights.
But this was different. fundamentally different because, as the source says, she wasn't just thinking about herself.
No. Her thoughts turned to every young soldier she'd mentored, every civilian she'd seen mistreated by authority, and specifically, every woman, especially every black woman, forced to stay quiet just to avoid trouble.
And she knew, with absolute certainty, she wasn't staying quiet.
The next morning, she's in her office at Fort Wayne. Barely slept. Not just from anger, but from meticulously replaying the stop. The way he spoke to her, the way his hand hovered near his gun, the way he tried to provoke her.
She recognized how bad it could have been if she'd lost her cool, how quickly things could have spiraled even with the recording.
Her aide, Sergeant Daniels, noticed her grim demeanor, asked if she was good, ma'am. Adrienne replied calmly, evenly, "No, but I'm handling it."
Direct and focused.
Daniel sensed the gravity, asked if she wanted him to call the base lawyer. She stated, "Already done." Leaned back, explained her purpose clearly. "I'm not looking for drama. I'm looking for accountability."
And this raises that critical question again. How does a career built on such stringent discipline and integrity inform such a decisive, measured response?
Her rank wasn't just a title. She'd earned it, commanding convoys in war zones, organizing disaster relief, managing soldiers and supplies across continents.
Years of responsibility, critical decisions under immense pressure, deep sense of duty, meticulous adherence to protocol, clear understanding of honorable authority.
Yet none of that registered with Mercer. To him, she was just another driver who didn't obey fast enough, someone to be controlled.
And that's what bothered her most, how easy it was for him to treat her that way. To dismiss her status, her personhood. That casual, reflexive abuse of power was the core problem she felt compelled to address, for principle.
So Adrienne initiated an immediate, meticulous, deliberate countermove, made calculated calls, military lawyers, inspector general's office.
Utilizing the system available to her.
Exactly. She attached the recording, that objective account, filed a comprehensive complaint, and let the facts speak for themselves. No embellishment, no drama. Just truth backed by video.
Letting the evidence do the talking.
By the end of that week, Sergeant Mercer's name was officially tied to an investigation. Department lawyers notified, their interest peaked.
The wheels of accountability starting to turn, albeit slowly.
Adrienne kept working, stayed quiet professionally. But behind the scenes, her resolve was steely. She was ready.
Because her lawyer indicated the stop might have broken federal rules, much more serious than a traffic ticket. They were prepared for court if needed.
And Adrienne didn't hesitate. She was ready for that public record, to make the injustice visible. Now, let's look at Renee Dawson's steadfast resolve while in custody. After being unlawfully arrested, tightly cuffed, shoved in the patrol car, she finds herself in a jail cell, stark, cold.
But despite the indignity, the injustice, her composure never broke. She knew how to maintain control under pressure, how to find mental fortitude, even when physically constrained.
In that cold, hard, unforgiving cell, she shifts slightly, rolls her shoulders to ease the stiffness from the tight cuffs. She'd spent nights in far worse conditions, where the threat wasn't just discomfort, but real danger. This, she recognized, was nothing by comparison, but that didn't mean she wasn't angry.
Controlled anger, though, not letting it consume her. Her training kicked in. Control the breathing, control the mind.
Grounding herself.
And then Sergeant Briggs shows up at her cell, his arrogance almost comical, arms crossed over his chest, that same smug smirk.
Trying to provoke her, break her composure. Comfy, he mocked. And then, if you just played along, you wouldn't be in here right now.
Renee's response. A silent, knowing smile. No defiance, no anger, just quiet understanding. "Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be," she murmured.
That must have thrown him off completely. Unexpected.
It made his smirk falter for a second, a flicker of annoyance, uncertainty. He quickly masked it, scoffed, continued lecturing.
People like you think the rules don't apply. You think a little confidence is enough to get out of trouble.
Just rambling, projecting his own insecurity.
Renee, let him talk, let him ramble. Knew it didn't matter, because he didn't know what was coming.
And then, almost on cue,
The power of connection, the network she'd hinted at, kicked in. A younger officer approaches Briggs, clipboard in hand, looking nervous, urgent. Sergeant, we got a call, and I think you need to see this.
the system's starting to react from the outside.
Renee overhears the hushed, urgent conversation from her cell, catches fragments. Lawyer, call from higher up, questions about why she was being held. Briggs's voice drops, sharp, annoyed.
His confidence evaporating rapidly.
Then, heavy, agitated steps. Briggs storms back to Renee's cell, jaw tight, hands clenched, smirk totally gone. What the hell did you do? He demands, low and furious.
Trying to blame her again.
Renee, still sitting calmly, leans forward slightly. Her reply is quiet, almost serene. I didn't do anything, but people talk, and some of us have friends in very high places.
Boom. The subtle reminder of her network, her standing. The power shift is palpable.
Briggs's face darkens. Renee could see it now, that moment of realization creeping in, the irreversible shift in power. He wasn't in control anymore.
The hunter becomes the hunted, in a way.
He mutters something incoherent, spins, disappears down the hall, leaving a vacuum where his arrogance used to be. Renee exhales slowly, controlled, knowing it wouldn't be long now. And when the truth came out, Briggs was going to regret every single decision that led him here.
She played her hand perfectly. The system, slow as it is, was finally starting to move.
And so, with these quiet acts of defiance, these strategic moves, the stage was meticulously set for the courtroom.
Where these isolated incidents would echo with a resounding, undeniable impact.
Right, this is where the paper trail, the recordings, meet the unforgiving glare of public scrutiny. Both cases ended up in court, transforming these personal encounters into powerful dramas that revealed stark, uncomfortable truths about power and accountability.
The quiet resolve of these women, coupled with that irrefutable evidence they secured, presented an undeniable challenge to unchecked authority. Let's start with Wallace v. Mercer.
Sergeant Mercer initially just scoffed at the court summons, a civil rights complaint. Unlawful detainment, intimidation, abuse of power. He thought, no way this holds. Arrogant conviction.
But the atmosphere back at the station started to shift, didn't it? Where he used to command respect, now there were whispers, sidelong glances.
Yeah. His boss, Officer Reading, a no-nonsense veteran, called him in, delivered a blunt truth. She's not pretending, Dan. This is Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, high-ranking officer, decorated war veteran, perfect record, powerful friends.
In the kicker.
And, Reading paused for emphasis, she has the whole thing recorded, from her view and yours.
Ooh, that must have hit hard.
Mercer still tried to argue, I follow the rules. Reading's reply was cutting. You were tense, Dan. You made things worse. You treated her like a criminal before you knew who she was. Mercer had no comeback, just absorbed the chilling reality.
So the court date arrives. How does Lieutenant Colonel Wallace present herself?
She certainly didn't slip in quietly. With deliberate, impactful intention, she walked in wearing her full military uniform. Badges, ribbons, medals, rank clear for all to see.
Making a powerful statement without saying a word.
Her purpose was unmistakable. She wanted the jury to see her not just as a woman in a car that night, but as someone who had profoundly served her country, meticulously followed its rules, and now expected fundamental fairness in return.
And Mercer's reaction to seeing her in uniform?
He was already seated. When he turned and saw her, the embodiment of her rank and professionalism, for the first time his smug look wavered.
The reality hitting him?
The courtroom was packed, not with reporters yet, but with officers from local police and Fort Wayne military base. Her soldiers side by side with civilians. To some, maybe a simple traffic stop gone bad. To Adrian, the breaking point of something much bigger.
A reckoning with unchecked power.
Adrian walked to the witness stand with that same steady, unhurried confidence she'd used leading troops through danger zones. Medals gleaming, posture commanding respect, not just because of her uniform, but because of what she'd earned.
Her testimony must have been compelling.
Her lawyer, Delaney Price, led her through it. Adrian spoke plainly, clearly, steady voice, no discernible emotion, just facts. Recounted the stop meticulously. Pulled over 11:15 p.m., wasn't swerving, wasn't drunk, cooperated, asked reasonable questions.
But Mercer responded with aggression, demanded she exit without explanation, repeated it louder when she asked why. That's when she started recording.
Affirmed she never refused an order, never resisted, identified herself and the vehicle. The room was silent, jury absorbing every detail.
And then the recordings, the aha moment for the jury.
Exactly. Both Adrian's phone recording, clear and damaging, and Mercer's own body camera footage were played. Irrefutable. Showed his harsh tone, his threatening stance, his hand near his gun even though she was cooperating. Then, glaringly, the unnecessary field test, the dismissive attitude when she passed it perfectly.
Silence in the room after that, I imagine. The evidence spoke volumes.
Deafening silence. You could literally feel their opinion changing. During cross-examination, Mercer's lawyer tried the just doing his job, concern for safety angle.
And Adrian's response?
Sharp, impactful, delivered directly to him. Judgment must be paired with discipline. That badge isn't a free pass, sir. It's a profound responsibility. Even the judge paused. acknowledging the truth in her words.
Powerful. Did Mercer testify?
No, he chose not to. But he had to watch his own footage. When the prosecutor asked why he ordered her out, why he escalated, Mercer had no answer.
And the key admission.
When asked if he knew she was a lieutenant colonel at the time, he admitted, voice barely audible, not then. And if he had known, voice dropped. Reluctant truth. I might have handled it differently.
Wow. That's a huge admission of bias. It became clear. Mercer didn't see a person that night. He saw someone who didn't obey fast enough, challenged his authority. Now everyone understood the egregious nature of his actions.
3 days later, Judge Cynthia Morales delivered the verdict. Wallace v. Mercer. Jury found in favor of the plaintiff.
Justice served.
Court ruled Mercer violated constitutional rights during an unlawful stop. Actions did not follow department rules or basic professional standards. No criminal charges, but Adrian awarded $35,000 compensation.
And the public record.
Crucially, the ruling would stay on the public record forever, sent to DOJ and Toledo PD for review and policy changes. Broader implications.
Adrian's reaction.
No smile, no cheer, just a single nod, not to the judge or jury, but to herself. She'd done precisely what she set out to do. Mercer's lawyer muttered about appealing, but seemed unsure. Conviction gone. Okay, now down to Birmingham. Dawson's dismissal. The system challenged. Renee Dawson stood in court, no handcuffs, no jumpsuit, impeccably dressed, well-tailored navy blue blazer, undeniable presence, quiet strength.
And Briggs, still trying to project confidence.
Still carried himself like he owned the room, shoulder squared, chin lifted, practiced facade. But a new stiffness, less certainty. Air around him felt brittle, cracks showing.
The prosecutor starts things off.
Yep, middle-aged man, calm but firm, states Dawson was unlawfully detained without probable cause, then drops the bombshell.
Yeah.
New information suggests a pattern of misconduct involving the arresting officer, Sergeant Daniel Briggs.
A pattern. That raises the stakes significantly. Murmurs in the courtroom.
Distinct ripple. Shock, dawning realization. How did Briggs try to defend himself this time?
He offered the same flimsy excuse, right? Claimed she was uncooperative.
Yeah. But the prosecutor immediately countered, lifted a document, highlighted Renee's impeccable, distinguished military career, detailed her credentials, Naval Academy grad, commendations, no criminal history, no citations.
Then turned sharply to Briggs, pointed question. Are you telling me, Sergeant, that despite all of this, Lieutenant Commander Dawson was such a threat that you had to arrest her over a broken taillight?
Briggs opened his mouth, but no words came. Shut it again. Couldn't respond coherently.
And then the profound, systemic aha moment. The racial profiling evidence.
Exactly. Prosecutor didn't stop. Revealed an internal review of your arrest history shows a disproportionate number of traffic stops involving black drivers in this district. Exposed the pattern.
Laying bare a systemic issue Briggs had seemingly exploited.
Briggs, rattled, tried falling back on following standard procedure. Judge Alan Kirkland wasn't buying it. Sighed, looked at the bailiff, declared, let's play the footage.
The body cam footage again. The objective truth.
Played for the silent courtroom. Confirmed Briggs's barking orders, Renee's calm, steady voice, the unnecessary escalation, the smug way he tightened the cuffs.
When it ended, dead silent room, truth hanging heavy.
Judge Kirkland leaned forward, steepled fingers, grim expression, declared with gravity, Sergeant Briggs, you violated protocol, you conducted an unlawful arrest, and you failed to report the full details in your initial statement. Sharp, piercing words.
Briggs tried to object.
Opened his mouth, but the judge wasn't finished. The charges against Lieutenant Commander Dawson are hereby dismissed. Then added the stinging public recommendation. And I strongly suggest an internal investigation into Sergeant Briggs' conduct.
Wow. Public rebuke and call for investigation.
Tension in the room snapped like a pulled rubber band. Collective exhale. Briggs looked like he'd been punched in the gut, face flushed, hands clenched uselessly.
Oh, what? Simply exhaled slowly. Controlled. She never had a doubt. Justice would prevail. Stood, calmly collected her things. One final, quiet glance at Briggs. No words were exchanged, source notes, because this time she wasn't the one who had to fight for her reputation. Briggs was.
He stormed out, heavy footsteps echoing, feeling everyone's condemning eyes. His veneer of untouchable authority irrevocably shattered.
The courtroom doors closed, but the repercussions for these officers and the ripple effects of these women's courage were only just beginning. Right, the immediate outcome for both officers was swift and severe. career-altering. But the true significance of these deep dives, it really extends far beyond just one court ruling or a career change. It's about that profound shift in understanding for those involved and for anyone observing these dynamics of power and accountability.
Absolutely. Let's look at the fallout for the officers first.
Sergeant Daniel Mercer. Outside the Toledo courthouse after the verdict, pacing agitatedly, shoulders hunched, trying to hide his face from the few local reporters who finally showed up. Stayed silent, made no comment, just drove away. And the official consequences followed quickly.
A week later, news broke. Mercer suspended while the police reviewed the case. An internal investigation triggered by the public ruling. Rumors started circulating, move to a different job, career over.
And the source highlights a key observation here, doesn't it? Either way, the protection he once had was broken and everyone could see it.
Exactly. That informal system that enabled him for 15 years, letting him be the tough guy who never apologized, dismissing complaints it had, for the first time, profoundly cracked.
He wasn't the alpha anymore. His vulnerability was exposed, a direct result of Lieutenant Colonel Wallace's steadfast resolve.
Meanwhile, in Birmingham, Sergeant Daniel Briggs stormed out of the courtroom, rage echoing in his footsteps. Face tight, jaw clenched, felt every eye on him. The shift from perceived authority to open scrutiny.
His control was slipping, that feeling of power eroding with every step.
And then the real hammer blow. Chief Eldon Baker, respected veteran, confronted him directly. Voice low but firm, full of disappointment and quiet fury. Laid out the severity. This wasn't some random woman, Sergeant. This was a high-ranking Navy officer. You think this is just going to disappear?
No escaping the gravity now.
Baker detailed the professional fallout. DA's office reviewing every single one of your cases in the past 5 years. Hundreds of arrests under scrutiny. Terrifying prospect.
Blagged for racial profiling, a career-ending accusation.
And damningly, the department, his supposed protector, isn't going down with you. Briggs put on immediate suspension, effective now, badge and gun confiscated, full internal affairs investigation launched.
Baker's prognosis.
Chilling. And if they find what I think they're going to find, Sergeant, your career is over. Words hit Briggs like a punch to the gut. Felt his world unraveling, the edifice of his power collapsing.
And for the first time in his career, he realized he wasn't untouchable. That arrogant belief he knew exactly what he was doing was shattered by cold, hard reality.
Now let's turn to the enduring impact of Adrienne Wallace's stand. Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, with characteristic humility, returned to her duties at Fort Wayne as if nothing had happened. Didn't want to be a hero, give interviews. That wasn't her goal. Had tasks, people to train, missions, duties.
But within her command, the message from her quiet, resolute example was crystal clear, wasn't it?
Abundantly clear. You don't always have to shout to earn respect. You don't always have to fall apart to prove you were heard. Sometimes staying calm says more than anger ever could.
That quiet strength, that unwavering composure became a profound lesson for those under her command.
2 months later, she stood before new recruits at Fort Wayne. Young, eager, barely out of basic. She wasn't there for combat plans, but the essence of leadership, what it truly means when no one is watching.
How did she frame it for them?
Scanned the room, asked, "How many of you believe a uniform automatically makes people respect you?" Few hands rose. Acknowledged their assumption, then stated firmly, "Respect isn't given. It's earned with every action, every choice you make." Let that sink in.
And how did she translate her personal experience into universal principles for them? That's key.
She continued, emphasizing a profound truth. The badge, the rank, the authority, it's not armor, it's a burden. If you can't handle it with honor, you don't deserve it. Her point: true authority stems from integrity, self-discipline, respect for the power entrusted, not the title itself.
The uniform amplifies but doesn't create the leader within.
To illustrate, she directly referenced her own recent experience, calmly, no drama. When an officer stopped me and forgot his duty, abandoned the principles he was sworn to uphold, I had choices. Could have screamed, frozen, ignored it, paused for impact.
Emphasizing the gravity of her decision.
But I didn't. I recorded it, I reported it, I went to court and told the truth. Long silence as the weight settled, then the powerful conclusion. That officer thought his badge made him invincible, until he saw my rank, not just on my uniform, but in how I stood my ground, in my unwavering commitment to what was right. That's the difference. That's what real leadership looks like.
Turning a personal affront into a universal lesson through her quiet strength.
She shut her folder, making her core message clear. Lead with honesty, serve with honor, and always remember, you don't just wear the uniform, you represent everyone who ever wore it and everyone who ever will. Step down, point made.
Her underlying principle resonating. Power without responsibility is just a disguise for fear. Speak up, hold firm against injustice, don't look away. Silence helps wrongdoers. Courage defends everyone.
Now, the broader significance of Renee Dawson's victory. She's in a quiet cafe, stirring coffee, watching her case make headlines, footage going viral, her calm versus Briggs's aggression. Lieutenant Commander wrongfully arrested, officer under investigation.
She wasn't surprised, though, was she? Knew how it would go from the start.
Yeah, she'd seen men like Briggs before, entitled, arrogant, used to bending the law, dismissing others. But this time he lost. Phone buzzes lawyer confirms Briggs' suspension, possible criminal charges. She sips coffee, quiet satisfaction.
Good. Her captain calls.
Yep, voice full of pride. DOD has taken interest. Might ask her to speak publicly. Renee hesitates, doesn't want to be a headline figure, personal trauma dissected.
But her captain reminds her of the bigger picture.
Exactly. Renee, you already are a headline. And whether you like it or not, what happened to you is a reflection of something much bigger than just one traffic stop.
And that leads to Renee's painful realization about the system, right? Briggs wasn't isolated.
Right, he was part of a systemic issue, a flawed system that had allowed officers like him to operate unchecked, enabled by indifference for years. This wasn't just personal, it was about the dozens, maybe hundreds of people in her shoes, but without the rank, the legal team, the clear evidence to fight back.
Recognizing the privilege inherent in her ability to fight back effectively.
She reflected, this isn't the first time something like this has happened, and it won't be the last. But it's the first time Briggs is facing real consequences. Because you didn't back down, Renee. Her steadfastness forced accountability beyond just him.
Even the mayor's office wanted to recognize her for handling it with professionalism and grace, which she found ironic.
Very ironic. Walking away from the cafe, sees a mother and son. Realizes with profound purpose she fought not just for herself, but for him, for every black boy and girl who deserved to grow up in a world where men like Briggs couldn't wield their badges like weapons, where authority had responsibility.
Her purpose crystallizing.
Her firm purpose. Because this fight wasn't just hers, it never had been. Power unchecked is power abused, and the only way to fundamentally change the system is to relentlessly hold it accountable. Her victory wasn't just personal, it was a beacon.
Which leads to that crucial question for you listening. How can each of us contribute to this broader change?
The source emphasizes a powerful truth. What happened to Renee happens to people every day. People who don't have the privilege of rank, connections, or undeniable evidence.
And that, the source argues, is precisely why it's important to speak up, to demand change, to refuse to stay silent. It's a compelling call to action, reminding us that standing firm can inspire broader movements.
So what we've rigorously unpacked today, it really isn't just about two individual traffic stops, however dramatic they were. These deep dives, they illuminate the stark, often uncomfortable realities of power dynamics. And they underscore the critical, undeniable importance of accountability.
Not just within law enforcement, but really in any position of authority in any sphere of life. They show how easily power can be distorted, misused, abused when it goes unchecked. How desperately systems need constant vigilant oversight.
If we connect this to the broader tapestry of just, societal interactions, both stories unequivocally underscore the undeniable transformative power of objective documentation.
Right. Think about it. A simple phone recording, the cold data from a body cam. It becomes the undeniable truth that shifts the scales of justice, dismantles narratives built on false authority.
They powerfully illustrate that maintaining composure under duress, really understanding your fundamental rights, and just having the sheer courage to speak up, to stand your ground, it can fundamentally alter the narrative.
And bring about profound consequences for those who misuse their power.
The profound insight here, the real aha moment for you, our listener, is recognizing that while these extraordinary women had the advantage of rank, resources, their core actions are universal lessons.
Absolutely. Their unwavering, calm resolve, their steadfast insistence on due process, their unshakable commitment to principles, their sheer unwillingness to be intimidated.
Anyone can embody those principles when facing perceived injustice, regardless of their position. It shows with profound clarity that personal integrity, backed by conviction, is an incredibly formidable force against any overreach or abuse.
These cases, therefore, serve as immensely powerful reminders that authority, to be legitimate, truly honorable, must always be coupled with a profound sense of responsibility.
And as Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace stated so powerfully through her actions and words, silence in the face of injustice isn't protection, it's often complicity.
And as Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson emphasized so definitively, real systemic change begins when each of us refuses to stay silent. When we actively engage in the vital conversation, demanding accountability not just for ourselves, but for all those who might not have the same voice, the same resources, the same evidence to fight back.
These deep dives into the sources, truly, they give us so much to reflect on. As you ponder these narratives, what stands out most powerfully to you from these remarkable stories of courage and accountability?
Consider this for your own reflection. In what ways can each of us, regardless of our own social standing, our job, our personal circumstances, embody that unwavering courage and profound composure shown by Lieutenant Colonel Wallace and Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson? How can we challenge authority when it unmistakably strays from its fundamental duty? Think deeply about the ripple effects, the far-reaching impact of just one person's decisive decision to stand their ground, to insist on justice, and to refuse to be silenced.